I raised her. I changed her diapers. I held her hand on her first day of kindergarten. And 9 years later, my own son stood in my driveway with a lawyer and told a judge I had stolen her from him. My name is Frank. I am 62 years old. I spent 31 years as an electrician in Knoxville, Tennessee, crawling through attics and wiring up houses so other families could have warm lights and full refrigerators. I retired with bad knees, a modest pension, and a small house on Crestwood Drive that my wife, Carol, and I had paid off together. Carol passed from breast cancer 7 years ago. She never got to see how this story ended. I think about that every single day. My son Danny was 24 when his daughter was born. Her name is Lily. She came into the world on a Tuesday in March, 7 pounds and 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the whole maternity floor. Her mother, a woman named Jessie, was 22. They were not married. They were not even really together anymore. By the time Lily arrived, Jessie signed over her parental rights when Lily was 4 months old and moved to Oregon. I am not here to judge Jessie. People make choices when they are overwhelmed and young. What I know is that she left, and Danny was suddenly alone with an infant he had no idea how to care for. For about 6 months, Danny tried. I will give him that. Carol and I helped every weekend. We bought formula and diapers. We watched Lily on Saturday nights so Danny could sleep. But Danny had been using painkillers since a back injury 2 years earlier. And by the time Lily was crawling, the pills had become something much worse. I started finding things in his apartment. Needles, spoons with burn marks on the bottom, bags of white powder I did not want to identify. One evening in November, Danny showed up at our front door. It was raining. He was soaked through his jacket and his eyes were somewhere else entirely. He was holding Lily against his chest like he had forgotten she was there. Carol opened the door before I even got out of my chair. He handed Lily to Carol without saying a word. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper and gave it to me. I still have that paper. I have kept it in the metal box on the top shelf of my closet for 9 years. On it, in Danny's handwriting, was this: Dad, I can't do this right now. I love her. Please keep her safe until I can come back for her. I'm sorry. Danny. I looked at him standing there on my porch in the rain. I wanted to be angry. Part of me was. But he was my son, and he was drowning, and there was a 4-month-old baby girl in my wife's arms looking up at the ceiling light, like it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. I said, "Go get yourself clean, son." He nodded. He walked back to his car. He drove away. That was the last time I saw my son for 4 years. Carol and I went to a family lawyer the next morning. We filed for emergency guardianship of Lily. The process took 8 weeks. We submitted Danny's note as evidence of abandonment. Lily's pediatrician, Dr. Harmon over at Pediatric Associates on Kingston Pike, provided documentation that she was in our care and healthy. Her records listed our address. Everything was done legally, properly, and on the record. Judge Patricia Wills signed the guardianship order on a Thursday afternoon, and Carol cried all the way home in the car. We raised Lily the way you raise a child you love completely. Carol taught her to read before she started kindergarten. I taught her to ride a bike in the driveway on a Sunday afternoon in July. When Carol got sick, Lily was 8 years old, and she used to sit on the edge of Carol's bed after school and read her chapters from a horse book she had checked out from the school library. Carol passed in the spring of that year. I held Lily while she cried, and she held me while I cried, and we became each other's whole family in that house. Lily started 3rd grade that fall. Her teacher, Mrs. Albright at Crestwood Elementary, knew our story. Every teacher she had knew our story. Her school records listed me as her legal guardian. Her dentist knew. Her doctor knew. Our neighbors on both sides of Crestwood Drive knew. The woman at the front desk of the public library knew her by name. Walter, my neighbor from across the street and my closest friend since 1987, had watched her grow up from that 4-month-old baby to a 12-year-old girl who beat him at checkers every single time and never let him forget it. Walter is 68 years old. He is a retired postal worker with 2 artificial hips and a sense of humor that has never failed him once. He was the best man at my wedding. He sat with me in the hospital the night Carol died. He has eaten dinner at my kitchen table more times than I can count. Walter and I are the kind of friends that most people only read about. I heard from Danny for the first time in 4 years through a letter from a correctional facility in Bledsoe County. He had been arrested on distribution charges 18 months after he left Lily on my porch. He had done time, gotten clean inside, earned his GED, and was going through a faith-based rehabilitation program. The letter was 3 pages long. He apologized to me. He apologized to Carol, not yet knowing she was gone. He said he was not asking for anything. He just wanted me to know he was still alive, and that he thought about Lily every day. I wrote him back. I told him about Carol. I told him Lily was healthy and happy and doing well in school. I sent him a photograph of her standing next to her 4th grade science fair project, a model of the solar system made out of painted styrofoam balls. He wrote back and said it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Over the following 2 years, Danny and I exchanged letters regularly. He was released after serving 3 years. He got a job at a warehouse in Chattanooga. He started attending church. In one of his letters, he wrote something I have read probably 100 times since then. He wrote, "Dad, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. You and Carol gave Lily everything I couldn't. Please keep taking care of her. I am not ready to be her father yet, and I don't know if I ever will be. Just let her know I love her." I kept that letter. I kept every letter he ever sent me from that facility. All of them are in the same metal box on the top shelf of my closet, sitting on top of the original note he handed me in the rain on my porch 9 years ago. Danny remarried 2 years after his release. Her name is Carla. I never met her in person. I knew her only from the one photograph Danny sent me in a Christmas card, and from the phone call Danny made to tell me about the wedding. He sounded happy. I was glad for him. I told him I hoped he had found something good. I should have paid more attention to what came after that phone call. The Christmas cards stopped. The letters stopped. I tried calling twice and got voicemail both times. I told myself Danny was building his new life and that was all right. People move forward. I understood that. What I did not understand, what I could not have imagined, was that Carla had done some research of her own. She had found out about the monthly child support payments available for custodial guardians. She had found out about a program through the state for kinship caregivers that Danny, as Lily's biological father, might qualify for if he had physical custody of his child. She had also, according to what came out later, told Danny that my house on Crestwood Drive was worth considerably more than Danny had realized, and that as my only child, he stood to inherit it. What Danny apparently did not tell Carla, or perhaps did not fully understand himself, was that the guardianship order Carol and I had obtained gave me legal standing, and that terminating it would not be simple. But Carla had found a lawyer. His name was Marcus Tilden. He operated out of a strip mall office in Chattanooga and had a website with photographs of himself looking extremely confident in a gray suit. On a Wednesday morning in early October, I was in the backyard raking leaves when a car I did not recognize pulled into my driveway. Danny got out first. I had not seen him in 9 years. He looked older, which made sense. He had filled out through the shoulders and cut his hair short. He was wearing a button-down shirt that looked like he had ironed it specifically for this occasion. Behind him, Carla got out of the passenger side. She was wearing sunglasses and had her arms crossed before she even reached the hood of the car. And behind them, carrying a briefcase and a manila folder, was Marcus Tilden in his gray suit. I set down my rake. Danny could not quite look me in the eye. He said, "Hey, Dad." "Like we had spoken last week." I said, "Danny." Marcus Tilden stepped forward and handed me a document. He explained, in the tone of a man who has rehearsed this speech many times, that my son was reclaiming his parental rights, that the guardianship arrangement had been informal and was now being formally contested, and that I had 30 days to transfer physical custody of Lily to her biological father or face legal action. I looked at the document. I looked at Danny. He was staring at the concrete. I said, "Danny, does Lily know you're here?" he said. "We'll talk to her together," I said. "She's at school," Carla said, from behind her sunglasses. "We'll be back this afternoon." I went inside. I called Walter. He came over within 10 minutes, still in his house slippers. I showed him the document. We sat at my kitchen table and read through it together. Walter said, "Frank, you kept those letters, right?" I said, "Every one of them." He said, "Then we're going to be fine." I called a lawyer that afternoon. Her name is Patricia Okafor, and she has practiced family law in Knox County for 22 years. I explained the situation. She told me to bring everything, the original guardianship order, every letter from Danny, the pediatric records, school records, everything. I told her about the metal box on the top shelf of my closet. She said, "Bring the box." Danny and Carla came back at 4 o'clock, just as Lily's school bus was pulling away from the stop at the end of the block. I watched Lily walk up the driveway, her backpack bouncing, and then stop dead when she saw her father standing next to an unfamiliar car. She looked at me. I walked to the end of the driveway and stood next to her. I said quietly, "That's your dad." Lily was 12 years old. She was smart and composed beyond her age, the way kids become when they have grown up with loss. She looked at Danny for a long moment. Then she said, "I know who he is." Danny took a step toward her. He said her name. He said he had missed her. He said he wanted them to be a family. Lily said, "Where have you been?" Danny did not answer that. Carla put her hand on his arm. Marcus Tilden looked at his phone. Lily went inside. She sat at the kitchen table and did her homework, and I could see from the way she held her pencil that her hand was not entirely steady. That night she came into the living room and sat next to me on the couch and asked me if she was going to have to leave. I told her the truth. I told her there were legal papers, and that I had a lawyer, and that I was going to fight for her with everything I had. She said, "I don't want to go, Grandpa." I put my arm around her and I said, "I know, sweetheart. I know." The next 3 weeks were the most grueling of my life. Marcus Tilden filed a motion to vacate the original guardianship order, arguing that it had been granted under emergency circumstances that no longer existed, and that the biological father had rehabilitated himself and was entitled to custody. On paper, his argument had some surface logic. Danny was clean. Danny was employed. Danny was married and had a stable home. What Marcus Tilden did not know, because Danny had apparently never told him, was the extent of the paper trail I had sitting in that metal box. Patricia Okafor filed our response within the week. She attached the original note from the night Danny handed Lily to Carol in the rain. She attached all 14 letters Danny had written me from the correctional facility, including the one where he explicitly asked me to keep caring for Lily because he was not ready to be her father. She attached the guardianship order, signed by Judge Wills. She attached 9 years of pediatric records, school enrollment records going back to kindergarten, report cards, documentation of Carol's illness and death, and a letter from Dr. Harmon stating that Lily had been his patient continuously since infancy, and that her care had been consistently and exclusively provided by me. She also contacted Lily's current middle school, Lily's school counselor, a woman named Mrs. Garland, submitted a written statement about Lily's emotional stability, her attachment to our home, and her clearly expressed wishes to remain in my custody. Mrs. Garland had spoken with Lily privately, as had a court-appointed social worker named Mr. Delaney, who spent 40 minutes with Lily at school and another 30 minutes in our home. Mr. Delaney also knocked on doors on Crestwood Drive. He spoke with Walter. He spoke with the family on my left, the Hendersons, who have lived next door for 12 years. He spoke with Mrs. Paulson on my right, who had babysat Lily on several occasions when she was younger. Every single one of them said the same thing, that Lily had lived in that house her entire life, that I had raised her alone after my wife passed, and that she was a happy, loved, well-adjusted child. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning at the Knox County Courthouse. 2 days before the hearing, I got a phone call. It was Danny. Not through his lawyer, just Danny. On the phone, calling from what sounded like somewhere quiet. He said, "Dad, I need to talk to you." I said, "I'm listening." There was a long silence. Then he said, "She told me this would be easy. She said you had no legal standing because the guardianship was never formalized." I said, "It was formalized, Danny. 9 years ago." Another silence. He said, "I know about the letters." I didn't say anything. He said, "Dad, I don't know how to get out of this without her." He stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. I said, "Danny, I need you to think about what is best for Lily. Not for Carla. Not for me. For Lily." He hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that call. Walter came over. The way Walter always does when something is happening, as if he has a sensor for it. I made coffee. We sat at the table. I told him about the call. Walter said, "He's caught between you and her. But tomorrow is going to show the judge everything she needs to see." I said, "I hope you're right." Walter said, "Frank, I have known you for 35 years. You did everything right. Every step of the way. That box of letters is going to walk into that courtroom and tell the whole story without you having to say a word." He was right. The hearing was at 9 in the morning. I arrived with Patricia Okafor. Danny and Carla arrived with Marcus Tilden. Carla was dressed in a way that made it obvious she had thought very carefully about how to appear sympathetic to a judge. She had a composed, practiced expression that never quite reached her eyes. The judge was the Honorable Richard Calloway. He was a heavy-set man in his late 50s with reading glasses that he wore halfway down his nose and a habit of looking at whoever was speaking over the top of them rather than through them. He had clearly read the submitted documentation thoroughly. Marcus Tilden presented his argument first. He spoke about Danny's rehabilitation, his stable employment, his marriage, his readiness to be a father. He did not mention the letters. He did not mention the guardianship hearing 9 years ago in any detail. He focused entirely on the present. Patricia Okafor then presented our response. She walked Judge Calloway through the timeline, piece by piece, document by document. She introduced the original note from the night Danny left Lily on our porch. She introduced the guardianship order. She introduced the letters from the correctional facility. She introduced Mr. Delaney's social worker report and Mrs. Garland's statement. She introduced the 9 years of medical and school records. When she placed Danny's letter on the record, the one where he wrote that he was not ready to be Lily's father and asked me to keep caring for her, Judge Calloway picked it up and read it twice. Then he looked over his reading glasses at Danny. He said, "Mr. Calloway, did you write this letter?" Danny said, "Yes, sir." Judge Calloway said, "And at the time you wrote it, did you intend for your father to continue raising your daughter indefinitely?" Danny was quiet for a moment. Carla put her hand on his arm. Danny looked at her hand. Then he looked at the judge. He said, "Yes, sir. That's what I intended." Marcus Tilden shifted in his seat. Judge Calloway set the letter down. He looked at the social worker's report. He looked at the school counselor's statement. Then he said, "Does the child know about this hearing?" Patricia Okafor said, "Yes, Your Honor. She has been informed, and she has communicated her wishes clearly to the court-appointed social worker." Judge Calloway said, "And what are her wishes?" Patricia Okafor said, "To remain in her grandfather's custody." The courtroom was quiet. Judge Calloway looked at Marcus Tilden. He said, "Counselor, I have in front of me a legally established guardianship, 9 years of documented primary care, a biological parent who, in his own written words, surrendered day-to-day parental responsibility to the grandfather, a unanimous and consistent community testimony, supporting the grandfather as primary caregiver, a social worker's report supporting the child's well-being in the current home, and the expressed wishes of a 12-year-old child who has lived in that home her entire life. What is your argument for disrupting all of that?" Marcus Tilden said, "The biological father has rights under." Judge Calloway said, "Biological rights are not unconditional, counselor. They are weighed against the best interest of the child. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that the child's interests are better served by removal from the home she has known her entire life?" Marcus Tilden did not have a compelling answer for that. Judge Calloway ruled from the bench. He denied the motion to vacate the guardianship. He upheld my legal guardianship of Lily. He recommended, in strong terms, that if Danny wished to build a relationship with his daughter, he pursue that through appropriate channels, counseling, supervised visitation, gradual relationship building, and not through the courts. He also noted, for the record, that the motion appeared to have been filed without full disclosure to the court of the existing documentation, and that the applicant's legal counsel should review their obligations under the rules of professional conduct. Marcus Tilden packed up his briefcase very quickly after that. Carla walked out of the courtroom without looking at anyone. Danny was still sitting at the table when we stood up to leave. I looked at him. He was staring at his hands. I stopped. I said, "Danny." He looked up at me. His eyes were red. I said, "You did the right thing today." He nodded, very slightly. I don't know what his life looked like after he walked out of that courthouse. I don't know what happened between him and Carla. That part of the story belongs to him, and I am not the one to tell it. What I know is that 3 months later, he sent Lily a birthday card with a short handwritten note inside. He did not ask for anything. He just said happy birthday, and that he hoped she was well. Lily showed it to me. She read it twice. Then she put it on her desk, which I thought was the right thing to do with it. Walter came over that evening to hear how the hearing had gone. I told him everything, detail by detail. The way you tell a story to someone who has been waiting for it. He laughed when I got to the part about Tilden packing up his briefcase. He said, "The gray suit doesn't help you when the letters are right there on the table." I said, "No, it doesn't." He said, "Frank, I want you to know something. You are the best father I have ever known. Not just to Danny, to Lily. You have given that girl everything. And you have done it while losing Carol and getting older and facing all of this. And you did not waver once." I did not know what to say to that. I thanked him. We sat on the porch until the sun went down, which is something Walter and I have been doing for 35 years, and which I hope we keep doing for as many years as we have left. A few weeks after the hearing, I started the process of updating my estate planning documents to ensure that Lily's future was secure regardless of what happened to me. I also set aside a specific fund to cover her first 2 years of college. She is 12 now. Real. I have time. But I also did something else. I called Walter over one afternoon, and I told him I wanted to do something for him. Something proper. Not just coffee and checkers. He looked suspicious, the way Walter always does when something sentimental is approaching. I told him I had named him in my will with a specific bequest, not because he needed the money, but because I wanted the record to show that he had been a part of our family, that he had been part of every good thing that happened in that house. Walter told me that was completely unnecessary. Then he asked if I wanted to play checkers. I lost, which is unusual. I think I was distracted. Lily came home from school that afternoon and found Walter still at the kitchen table. She sat across from him and started setting up the board before she had even taken off her backpack. He gave me a look over the top of her head, the kind of look that says everything without saying anything. I went to make coffee. From the kitchen I could hear the sound of checkers being moved across the board, and Lily saying something that made Walter laugh out loud, and the particular quiet of a house that has had enough loss in it to know what peace feels like when it finally arrives. I have been asked, since all of this happened, what I would tell another grandparent who was facing something similar. I have thought about that more than once. What I would tell them is this: document everything from the very first day. Keep every piece of paper. File the legal paperwork, even when you think it is unnecessary, even when you believe everything will work out without it. Because the paperwork is not just protection. It is the record of what you did. It is proof, in black and white, that you were there, that you showed up, that you chose that child every single morning for however many years it took. The night Danny left Lily on our porch in the rain. I was 62 years old in my heart before I was 62 in years. I was tired and grieving and terrified. Carol was already sick, though we did not know how sick yet. I had every reason in the world to let someone else carry that weight. I kept the note he handed me. I kept every letter after that. I kept every receipt and record and report card and photograph. Not because I knew someday I would need them in a courtroom, but because they were part of her story. And her story was my responsibility. She is 12 years old. She beats Walter at checkers every single time. She is reading at a 10th grade level. And she wants to be a veterinarian. She sleeps in the same bedroom where Carol used to read her horse books out loud. She has her father's dark hair and, I think, her grandmother's eyes. She is exactly where she is supposed to be. And that is all I ever fought for.